bench we have an old STIHL 019 top handle chainsaw. The customer dropped it off, said it belonged to his grandfather and he would like to get it back up and going. He wants me to give him a quote on what it's going to take to get this saw back up and going. So let's get into it and see what it's going to take. So the customer said he thinks that this saw has been sitting for around 15 years. So let's get into it. We're going to go over it and see what he's going to need. I'd say the bar and chain is pretty well worn. You can see the discoloration here from the heat. The chain's all rusted, so it's definitely going to need a bar and chain. Another thing I've noticed is that the trigger won't come back down. So we pull it all the way up, it won't return back to idle position. I'm thinking there's a cable that's going to run to the carburetor up here, and that cable is sticking. The oil cap is cracked, so he's going to need an oil cap. It's bleeding out, so let me see if I can find something to stick over that so we won't make a mess. So I got a cap off of a oil container. That'll fit up there. That'll just keep from making such a mess on my bench. Let's get this bar and chain off. You can see where that chain is rusted. So I'm going to suggest replacing that. Chain brake is functioning. It looks like to access this throttle cable, we're going to have to remove this handle and take this cover here off because the carburetor should be under here. So let's get that done. That was really stuck on there. And I can see that there is a cable back here. Now I did already put some fuel down the plug hole and pulled it over, and it did run and die, so I know that this saw is capable of running. Alright, now let's remove this bolt here and get this starter cover off. So I can see the carburetor back there. Let's get this blowed out so I can get a better look. Now we can get a better look at the carburetor sitting back in there. Looks like we need to remove this intake piece as well. So it looks like we're going to have to remove this cable, and it doesn't look very fun to get to. So you can see when I pull the cable, it is returning. So it's sticking here on the trigger itself. So these little ends, these ears here are all rusted up. So let's sand these down, get them cleaned up so it can work in these holes correctly. So I got both of these cleaned up, sanded down. That's spinning freely. Let's hook our cable back into here. Now that's back working like it should. Let's put all this back together. All right, now we're going to slide this intake back on. I'm going to go take this cover and give it a quick clean up. All right, I've got my cover cleaned up. Let's get it back on. Let's get our handle back on. Went on a lot easier than it came off. Have one more bolt to put in back here. Let's put our cover screws back in. Have to put a latch back here on the back. Got our trigger back working right. Let's flush out this fuel tank. There's not much fuel left in it. It's mostly just the leftover two-stroke oil. We'll go hit it with a little air. Let's put a little fuel in it. Put a little ball in it too, just in case it does run. I want to see if it's also oiling. Gonna blow the air filter out. All right, let's set it on the floor and see if it'll do anything. Let's give it a little help. We're going to pull the spark plug out and drop some fuel into the cylinder. We're going to put a new plug in it too. Put a little bit more fuel in it. Let's try it again. We can see that it is oiling, but it just wants to run and die. So it seems to me we have a fuel problem or a massive air leak. On this saw, I don't see where there's any way you're going to do a pressure vacuum test with the engine sitting in this case. So we're going to tear this thing completely down. We'll do a vacuum and pressure test. If that passes, then we'll look into that carburetor. So let's get this torn apart. Looks like there's a Carter key through the oil tank. What would the purpose of that be? Maybe a vent? Huh. See that key? Carter key. I don't see a lot of these top handle saws, so I'm not too familiar with them, but I can't tell if the flywheel needs to come off or not. This pipe needs to come back out of the way. Let's remove these bolts here and see what happens. Looks like we're going to have to remove some stuff on this side too. Pop this clutch off. This clutch is going to be reverse thread, so backwards. Got a worm gear. Let's snatch this flywheel off so we can get this piece here that holds the throttle cables off. Flywheel knockoff tool. You gotta have one if you're gonna be working on saws. There's the other end of our throttle cable. Alright, now we have the engine out of the case. I'm going to go blow this off right quick and then we'll be back. Okay, I've got it all cleaned up. You can see a kink in the fuel line right there. Right here where it goes into the tank is kinked. But this engine is not going back in that case without doing a pressure vac test on it. It's too much work to get to this point to not do it. So I'm gonna get my kit out and we'll get it set up and I'll show you how to do a pressure vacuum test on it. So what I do is I'll remove the carburetor and the muffler, and I just have some rubber gasket material that we'll use to block up the inlet and exhaust holes. And then I have a compression tester tool here that will make sure you take your straighter valve out. If you've got a straighter valve, you need to take it out. We'll put a piece of hose on here and then we'll hook to our Mighty Vac to draw vacuum and pressure. So let's get all this blocked up. This carburetor definitely looks rough. So this engine's got a reed valve block. You want to make sure that your reed valve is closed, and this one looks good. It's all bent up, it's not going to seal. So we'll lay our piece in there. Alright, our intake's blocked up. Let's do the same on the exhaust. So what I can see of the piston and cylinder from this side, it looks good. You want your piston at bottom dead center. Like I said, don't forget to take your Strader valve if you're using a compression tester tool, because you'll get an incorrect reading if you leave it in there. Now I've got a piece of fuel line we're going to use to hook it up. So let's set it to vacuum. So we are losing vacuum. Let's go over to pressure. Put about 5-6 pounds on it. And we are losing pressure. So now we need to take some soapy water and see where the leak is. First thing to check is going to be all your connections and make sure your tool isn't what's losing the pressure. Checking everywhere that I sealed this up. So every one of these bolts has got leaks. Let me see if I can hold it. See it bubbling? That one. So I'm thinking we can take all these 4 bolts out, clean the threads and everything, silicone them, put them back, and that should take care of the problem. Okay, so I took all my pan bolts out, and I used this silicone here. It's good stuff. Put that on all the threads, let it sit. Now we're going to come back and check. And just to show you, it is holding vacuum and pressure both now. Let's pump it up to about 6 pounds. So we're definitely going to go through this carburetor, check it out, clean it up, And we got to clean up the other case half here. This all needs to be cleaned up before we go back together. So let's put all this stuff up and we'll go through this carburetor. All right, let's open this thing up and see what we got. Yeah, I think it was a good idea to come in here. The pump actually looks good. There's no memory in it, so I think we'll be fine to reuse that. Let's check out the metering side. Yeah, it's coming all apart. We'll be replacing that. Writing down what my jets were set at before I take them out. So my high was 3/4 of a turnout and my low was 1 turnout. All right, let's get this thing washed up and we'll go from there. This pump gasket looks like it's in good shape, so we're just going to reuse it. Forget to put your fuel screen back in. Let's set our load needle back in. We're going to go all the way until it lightly seats, and then we're going to back it out 1 full turn. Before we put this metering diaphragm back in it, let's hook the pressure tester to it just to make sure that we don't have a leaking needle and seat. Appears that we're good. Let's set our metering gasket and diaphragm back on. Gasket first, then your diaphragm. Okay, our carburetor's back together. Let's get it put back on the engine. Hook our choke linkage back up. I'm going to go clean up the other case half and we'll slide it back in. Before we slide this back in, we're going to slide the fuel tank in with it, but we need to replace this line. You can see it kinked there. So that's not going to work. Got me a new piece of fuel line. Let's get it in the tank. Of course, we're going to stick us a new fuel filter on the end. Got a new filter on. Cut it a little bit long. If I need to pull some back through the tank, I can. Now we should be ready to set this back into the case. I'll go ahead and start a couple of these main bolts here. Now I'm trying to feed the throttle linkage into the spot on the carburetor for it. Oh, okay. This space has to hook through here too. Has to come in here. Let's see. There we go. It's working like it should now. Let's go ahead and put our ignition coil back on. Now let's start working on this handle. Let's go ahead and secure that with a couple of bolts. Then we'll verify everything is working as it should. Alright, we got it back together right. So we got our position there, run, off. Let's get this clutch back together. We're going to throw a little grease on this bearing here. Line up our worm gear with our notch that's in our drum. Let me clean this drum out. Alright, I've got her back together. Let's get some fresh fuel in it. Alright, let's go see if we did any good. So I think we're going to end this video here. This was just supposed to be working up a quote to see what we needed, but I didn't see any other way to pressure and vacuum test this saw without splitting into it and getting it out to do it. So we went ahead and did it, and the guy that owns this saw I've known all my life, so we'll call it an hour labor plus the parts and he should be good. I still got to order a bar and chain and a oil cap, and I'll probably get a gasket for the fuel cap. So I'm not going to be able to cut with it today. I'll do another short video of putting that stuff on and doing some cuts with it. It might take me a while to get my parts today. I think it's December the 26th, so we're right in the middle of New Year's and Christmas, so it's going to take a minute for me to get parts in. But I'm going to give him a call and let them know what we've done so far. Make sure you get a ball and chain coming, oil cap, and should be good to go. And I also might have to do some small field adjustments once I get a bar and chain on it, and we'll set all that, make sure everything's good with that. And if you found this video entertaining, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.